All right, welcome to TKB Bench, episode number 13, the premiere episode of season 2.
Yeah,
How exciting, right, Adi?
yeah. We came to two seasons with the we retain our viewership. All exciting news. And what is the box, Muresh? Tell our
Oh,
audience.
for the viewers that are watching, this episode of TKB Bench has a sponsor. This episode is been dearly sponsored by our friends at Whisk and Butter Confections. They sent us a box of cupcakes, and as you can see, the only thing left is the box. They have excellent cupcakes that are all baked by one person, and they've given us a discount code. And to find out what it is, stay tuned to the episode.
Yeah. Okay. So jumping to the episode. This episode is something that Puri and I have been discussing since the beginning of season one, where the pandemic and just things in life in general has motivated us to talk about this topic. And the topic is mental health. I'm sure you guys are aware. Uh, it's just something that is a taboo in Indian culture, and actually not in just Indian culture. It's actually a taboo in the world around. So we just wanted to know more about it. We just wanted to know how people from different stratas of society, different parts of society deal with this. Um, so we've got on Banyan, who has helped us understand and how we're furthering our search into the whole, uh, I don't know, the education of mental health. So what do you think, Puresh? What is, how would you explain mental health, or what has been your eye-opening moment?
For me, actually, I was very fortunate in the sense that mental health wasn't a taboo for me all my life.
Hmm.
In fact, I didn't even know it was something special. It has always been like you break a bone, you see an ophthalmologist. You have issues with your mental health, you see a mental health specialist. For the first time, I discovered what mental health was, and it was something that is, I don't know, slightly different maybe, because in sixth grade, our school had a counselor. And I found that very peculiar because if there's a counselor, why isn't there a pediatrician? Because in a school where kids study, I was like, if you think about it, you probably want a pediatrician more than a counselor.
Hmm.
So that was the first time it popped out to me that people are dealing with things that they may have a difficulty uh, accessing the tools to solve. Uh, so that was, I think, my first real eye-opening moment or sort of inquiry into, oh my God, what is this mental health thing? Seems slightly off. And then, uh, you grow and you meet a lot of people that go through things and they talk to you, and I have also gone through things, and you realize that it's something that everyone goes through. First of all, it's not something that only when you are part of a certain strata of society you go through. Everyone goes through it. Everyone has their day-to-day challenges, and at the same time, I again live in a bubble where it's talked about so much, where it's almost become a non-issue to me. Like even if you go to my Instagram and start typing my stories, like the third story will be about someone reminding you to check in on somebody that has anxiety, or check in with someone that you know is depressed, and things like that. So I live in that kind of a bubble, and really just to sometimes when that bubble breaks, right? I talk to someone and let's just say I express as something as, "Hey, how are you doing?" Or I sort of I ask one, especially with my male friends. I say, "Oh, how are you? Okay? Are you feeling bad?" They'll act all macho and be like, "Oh, that's nothing, bro." And like I don't know, a couple of drinks and they'll start crying. But so I've definitely seen people. There is a reluctance to share the state of your mental health and how you're feeling with people. And I think this episode may help a couple of people deal with it better. Yeah. What about you, Adi? What's your relationship been with the uh, subject?
Uh, so I used to be. I actually didn't understand a lot about mental health when for a long time in my life, right? It is it is like a taboo subject. Uh, uh, I don't know how to say this, but like when I went to Singapore and I met more people and I was put in a harder situation in life, more people had mental health issues, and That's when I realized that the reluctancy to talk about these things. Where I used to tell people like go share, go talk to people, and then people were scared of being blacklisted by their peers. Like they had this idea that if I break a leg, uh, I'm still not incompetent. People don't see me as incompetent from doing my job, but if people see me as depressed or dyslexic, people see me as permanently incompetent of doing my job, and I can never recover from that. And I don't know. For me, I don't see it as very different, but like I just realized that this is not somewhere the world is progressing as fast as it should be. It's just like we are definitely not doing a very good job of uh, helping people or breaking out of this social stigma. It's taking a long time, and thousands and thousands of people, millions of people being affected by it. Uh, and until very recently, this has not been addressed. Uh, did you know 28 people in India kill themselves every day? And like
That's
this is
nearly a person a month, if you think about it.
no
There's
every
30
day.
days in a month.
No, every day. 28
No,
every
that's what I'm
day.
saying, right?
No,
Number
yeah,
28 is basically the number of days in a month. So there's a
yeah,
lot of people.
yeah. So every hour there's one person dying, and I mean not to get very depressed and things, but like how I realized mental health and everything. This is a beautiful show called Atypical. It's this show about this boy who is on the autism spectrum and how he progresses through life with his relationships and his needs, his wants, and it's just from his perspective, and that really shine light upon it shine a very cute, quirky light upon mental health that people normally don't do. It's either this very sad, depressing state of being, or it's this ridiculed state of being. There's no like fun, normal way of expressing thoughts about mental health. So that's why I like that show a lot, and I highly urge everybody who's watching this to see it. Yeah. So anything else before we add our guest, Puresh?
I think really, like, I'm really looking forward to the conversation with our guest. He's a really accomplished person. Yeah. And before we add the guest, I'd just like to say one thing. This episode of TKB Bench is sponsored by our dear friends at Whisk and Butters. And like I mentioned before, they sent us a box of cupcakes. The only thing left is the box. They've given us a special discount code, TKBXWB, WB for Whisk and Butters. So you can DM to place orders. Do use that code and you'll get a discount. Thank you so much. And off to our guest.
Thank you, Puresh. Bye bye. So, Dr. KV Kishore Kumar began his career as a senior psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. He's now serving as the director at the Banyan, and he is inspiration to a lot of youngsters who have volunteered with the Banyan through the years. So, sir, one thing we want to know is what exactly is the Banyan for our audience here, sir? What exactly is the core principles of the Banyan?
Right. Valiant is an organization. It was started in the year 1993. It is driven by rights of people, justice, restoring dignity, and it largely addresses the needs of the most marginalized in the society. You may recall
Hmm.
existent when it was started. The only service that was available was to admit them into mental hospitals, and they were
Hmm.
put into the mainstream of treatment. And in
That's
our opinion, we felt that that was not the right thing to do. They require a different kind of care because homeless, mentally ill people represent homeless mentally ill represent a group where they come from total poverty, discrimination, neglect, They often experience hunger, abuse, and so on. So people with this kind of a problem require a very different kind of attention, and that is where the values and principles of the Banyan came in handy, and it is now being replicated in close to 15 centers in the country, and many states are likely to replicate this model of care.
Yes, sir. So, as far as I'm aware, before the Banyan happened, at least in Chennai, like in Chennai, the only thing that we had was the Key Park Mental Hospital, and I've
Yes.
seen many videos where the place is just mostly like to remove the mentally ill from society. It's not to rehabilitate or to help them. It's just to keep them away from society, right, sir?
Mental hospitals are in poor condition because large number of people are admitted in the hospital. The resources that is necessary to govern mental hospitals is not adequate, and the kind of support that is required to manage people in these institutions are also not adequate, even though there is something called as minimal standards in mental health care. Sometimes it is not adhered to due to lack of material, financial, and human resource. But the way it is largely because of the poor investment that goes on into these facilities. And secondly, it fosters a lot of dependence because the resource that is necessary is inadequate. That is why the current Mental Health Act recommends communitization of mental health care, and the duration of stay into.
I think they're having some technical difficulties, and I think we're going to change our guest. I'm Rani.
Hi, Adi. I'm sorry about the technical glitches because I think of the rains. There's been a power cut at the hospital.
Yeah, we are aware. There's been a lot of power problems here too.
Yeah.
Crazy today.
So how are you? How much have you heard, and where can I come in?
Oh, we were just talking about. So there's this problem in society, right? People believe that once you suffer from a mental illness or mental setback, that is it. You are done. Like you don't get back into society. So our question is there a way you can get back into society, or is there a way where you can come back into society?
So this whole thing about getting back to society, I think, is a myth because there's so many of us living with a mental illness and still very much part of a society, and we're just hiding behind the stigma, or we don't want to talk about it, or we're handling it privately. So I don't think many of us really ever left society. So but I think what you're talking about is very severe mental illness when you're talking about incarceration or long-term institutionalization, right? Again, like I said, it's a myth because we have worked with over 3,500 inpatients in the past 28 years, and over 1,500 have gone home, and about 50% are living productive lives with jobs and families and marriages and friends and everything. So I think that's the myth that one needs to bust, that that people need to get back, because there are some people still in society living with a mental health issue, maybe being resilient and dealing with it themselves, or some people suffer in silence, and there are disastrous consequences to that. But there are also people who have undergone incarceration, who have undergone institutionalization, and come out brilliant and shining on the other side. So there is a positive story to all this, and I think we've also over dramatized this whole incarceration story, and I think Tamil cinema has not been very kind to mental health or cinema in general. So I think we all have very dramatic stories and very dramatic images in our head, which is preventing us from really seeing the truth and what's right in front of us. I think if you just go around, start talking to people, you'll realize just how many people have actually gone and been hospitalized, and and are managing their lives. You just need to break free from the chains of stigma, and we should break free from the chains of our own minds, which are thinking that okay, this is the path to take, and I can't talk about it, or I don't even want to hear about it. I don't want to think about it. You're scared to even find out, but when you go out and find out, there are some brilliant stories that that are out there.
Yeah. So no, actually, this is actually very interesting that even in India, people are coming back, and people in other countries, they're having this hesitation. Like I was reading this case study where in America they were asking if people would be comfortable working with someone who has suffered from depression, or who is going through a mental illness, or has autism, or is in the Down syndrome. They about 60% of 63% of them said that they would not feel comfortable with this. And but I have been in a country where they've beautifully integrated ways and algorithm, like a system where we incorporate more people, like people from all aspects of life. In Singapore, you can have people who are in IT jobs, and like there's nothing. You can't have a black mark on your record.
Right.
And like, how would that help? How would we implement something like that in India? Do you think India is a bit more progressive, or a bit like we just ignorant to the whole concept of all this?
So I think India, in many aspects, not just with regard to mental health, but in many aspects, is a country of contradictions. On the one hand, we see amazing generosity, amazing kindness, and on the other hand, we have one of the largest wealth gaps in the world. And on some hands, on one hand, you will see bureaucrats and amazing politicians who've laid their lives for the country and who've given their heart and soul and everything else to the country. And then on the other hand, you'll also see very corrupt people. So I think even with regard to mental health, it's like that. So we've seen and we've been fortunate to be on the field and really seen some communities both in rural, mostly in rural India, where they've taken mental health with a sense of acceptance, like they do with everything else. Yes, okay, so this person is unwell, and but he or she is our responsibility. And we've seen great stories of kindness, great stories of acceptance, and these stories have actually been critical much more than a pharmacological intervention or a psychotherapeutic intervention or something scientific, quote unquote. This acceptance and this being part of this community and being included has actually been more miraculous than any external sort of intervention that one can think of. So, but on the other hand, we also see many stories of cruelty, many stories of torture. But but the thing is that, like I said, we just need to open our eyes to some of these realities, because there is. So I think. India, like I said, is a country of contradictions, and if you really come out and see how amazing and accepting some people are, and put their stories out there, and inspire them to speak, and not inspire them to speak, be inspired by them, and learn from them. We just sort of poo-poo some of these things, but these are but abroad, what they do is they're writing papers about these kinds of people. They're starting institutions based on acceptance. They're starting mental health services based on acceptance. We're just saying, okay, fine. But if we actually look at what they're doing, they are actually making the biggest change, and they are a lesson in psychology. They are a lesson in sociology, and we just need to highlight these stories a little more. But they are happening.
So, what are some things about? So, through all this, I can understand that there's a huge lapse of knowledge between the general public and experts in your case,
Yeah.
like you. So, what are some things that you believe are like incredibly misunderstood. Like we really need to change narrative on this certain things.
I think, I mean, I would just like to say at this point and place on the record that, when somebody, suicide has been talked about very much off late. And, and because of that, many of us thought that there would be a healthy discussion about depression that will happen, but it's now turned a big witch hunt and like an anti-woman parade that is happening. So I think when somebody dies by suicide, they have gone through extraordinary pain and they've gone through extraordinary suffering, and the people who are around them also go through extraordinary suffering. So let's stop, I think, blaming us or somebody else for a phenomenon that has happened, because it's not an easy decision to take. So I think one of the biggest myths one should bust right now is, if somebody dies by suicide, it's your fault or my fault or his fault, and you start sort of playing a blame game, which is really, really traumatic for the person, for the survivor who's been closest to them. So I think that is one myth that definitely needs to be, and we're being very cruel as a society, and I think that is something that I'd like to address first thing. And another thing is, like I said, mental health has been portrayed extremely melodramatically in cinema. That you come, you're here and you're locked up, and for the rest of your life, that's what you're going to be, and you're tied to that fate, kind of thing. Many people actually accept their mental health prognosis with a sense of pride. They say that it helps them grow. They say that it helps them learn. It is actually it can be an extremely brilliant learning experience for you, but it can also be traumatic. So it's not as simple as you think, and it's not like, oh, hey, you know what, I've got this problem, and it's just like breaking my bones or diabetes. It's a little more complex than that, because it is something that stays with you for a very long time. But how you accept yourself and how others accept you is really, really what makes a difference. So either we go into this pity mode of, oh my God, poor things, they're like children, they don't know what they're doing, or we get into scary mode where we close and lock our doors, and then no one is allowed in or out. So I think we should stop these extreme reactions and really look within ourselves to see that, hey, have I gone through something like this? Have I experienced distress? Have I, actually had really, really dark moments when I've, wanted to end it all? Or, do I feel like I'm very disoriented right now? So we just have to understand mental health and mental illness as part of a spectrum. And I think that itself will lead to a lot of breaking of these walls that we have chosen to build for ourselves and for society.
I completely agree, and I've been having these discussions with my friends past few days, and on the note of suicide, I think one very sad thing in suicide is this is going to sound weird, but just hear me out, okay?
Yeah.
When somebody wants to die or somebody is on that verge, one of the weirdest things that as society we tell them is, no, you can't die, because you're going to put all these people into suffering if you do it.
Yeah.
We, instead of helping them to stay alive, we guilt trip them to stay alive.
Absolutely.
And we don't even give them the freedom of choice to die. We didn't give anybody a freedom of choice to come to life, but we force people to stay alive. And I don't know, it's such a weird concept to me that people are forced to stay alive.
Yeah.
Staying alive is is just a thing you do, and it shouldn't be something that you do without consent. And on the other hand of the acceptance, okay, a little bit of a weird personal story of the podcast host here. Purvesh and I suffer from dyslexia, and it's not so. Society has not been very. So basically, dyslexia, people don't understand what the word is or what it is. But as soon as they hear a word and they get linked to something, it's not a physical thing. You're like Pitamagan. I'm sure you watch Pitamagan.
I've seen it.
Everything is Pitamagan. So anything which is an ailment and not physical Yo, they were
Yeah.
in Pitamaga.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or Setu or Singapore Jakal or,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, all over the place.
Yeah.
But I I don't know. I wouldn't say life has been harder or easier, but living with dyslexia is not hard. Living with people who know you have dyslexia is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I believe that empathy I can understand with people of any on any side of the spectrum in mental illness, right? If I have autism, it's not autism that's going to be my problem. It is having autism with people who know I have autism. It's like how they are going to treat me after knowing I have autism.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I agree and disagree a little bit with that, because the illness itself can actually make you suffer quite a bit, because there can be terrible negative voices, and really just you work so hard at trying to get better. But I mean, stigma and social exclusion definitely, I would say, is a bigger killer. But we should also not discount the impact very severe. So, you are somebody with dyslexia. I'm talking about somebody with depression, or even through your dyslexia, you may have had genuine difficulties in managing things, just purely because of the diagnosis that has been given to you. So I'm saying that one thing is definitely not to romanticize depression or romanticize schizophrenia or anything, but I'm just saying that it's not very easy to live with, because of the illness itself. Let's not discount that. There are sometimes very deep negative voices that could lead you to do terrible things, and then in the absence of social support, then in the absence of either a pity party or people fearing you or people just not wanting to be near you, everything together, nobody takes that one snap decision. Nobody, it's not like, hey, you know what, it's Friday morning, I'm going to do something terrible. But it's just you've gone through so much suffering, and it's a cluster of emotions, and it's very, very complex. So so that's when our empathy, in fact, needs to be a little higher. That, hey, or be very frank, saying, hey, you know what, I don't know what you're going through, but it's fine. I'm here if you need me. So I think that it is genuinely a difficult illness, and that it's been there since mankind came into being. So it is a difficult illness, and we still don't know what causes it. Psychiatry is a very young field. It's about 100 200 years old, and we've barely scratched the surface. So, and everybody's everybody has a different opinion, everybody is an expert. So I think that we should just show some humility in saying that, hey, this is what I know about mental health issues, and this is what I don't know. But either as a survivor, as a caregiver, as a friend, a stranger, member of the general public, just understand that there is a complexity to it, and it could be by virtue of the illness itself. So that is just one thing I wanted to just add to what you said.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's that I'm just trying to say that it's,
Sure.
Yeah, society is like not very accepting. Even if you are, society is still going to even, like as you said, people still think of it as a tool, as a powerful thing. People have this belonging to them.
Yeah.
Society does not see it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like on that note of the tipping point, I think today you guys, a lot of people would have read this very harsh headline where this man had committed suicide, and the headline had written, "Man commits suicide because wife didn't make him dosa."
Yeah.
I mean, probably that was the last thing that happened, and he passed away. But I honestly don't think that this is how we should be writing our headlines. Imagine how many things must have gone against him, or how many things have piled on for that dosa to be that tipping point, right? So, like, I think every suicide, that's the thing people are not understanding. It's not this one thing. It's a lot of things. I mean, this is going on a very downward slope, but we will get through this, guys. So, Jyoti was, I hope I remember her name, was the first student who committed suicide in Tamil Nadu, in Madurai, because of the NEET exams anticipation.
Okay.
And people were like,
I think we should start saying died by suicide and not committed suicide, because committed sounds like they committed a crime.
Okay, good point.
So nowadays
They
we say
died
died
by
by suicide.
yeah,
So yeah.
died by
Hmm.
suicide. Sorry.
Yeah.
So they died by suicide, and a lot of people were like, it's because of the anticipation towards NEET, and that started this whole NEET anti-NEET thing. But
Yeah.
I don't think the problem is with NEET. I think the problem is with our culture of how we think about exams and education. This girl probably thought her entire life depends on this one exam, where if she does not do well in this exam, that is it. Like that's the end of her life, where all the doors are closed. And honestly, right, any human being with any such thought doesn't have to be an exam. It could be any thought where if you believe that your life does not have any more motivation from this point forward, who exactly wants to live at that point, right? It's not
Yeah.
just everybody would do the same. We need to show people no, there's no end. It's just
Yeah.
like the obstacle is the journey. It's not obstacles in the journey. The obstacles are the journey. So how would
Yeah.
you tell like my generation, because I think my generation is right now.
Whoa. What do you
Go
mean
ahead.
your generation? Okay, anyway, go. I think let's just say general public. Your
Okay, general
generation, it
public.
seems.
No, just like
Mm,
the students. Okay, I'm not in college. I don't have any plans of
mm,
going, but the college students or the school students who are getting out of school or getting into college or
mm.
writing exams. Uh,
Yeah.
how would you try combating this pandemic of stress and anxiety?
So I think that is a very a whole other topic altogether. But I think if we are, since we are on the subject, and we shouldn't just randomly deviate. I think that like you said, suicide doesn't happen because of one reason. It's a cluster of reasons. And what has happened to this girl, and even this morning, I read stories of, I think, 4 students who have died
Yeah.
by suicide because of NEET. And I'm not an expert on suicide. There are people way better qualified who can speak about it. But I would say that, yes, we do place way too much impetus on, actually, we place way too much impetus on these social constructs that actually really, don't exist. Because, yes, sure, marks are important because you are living in the real world, and, it does matter which college you get into and all that. But then, okay, what after that? What after that? There is always, like, there's some step or the other that, you have to quote unquote take in order to be considered a successful person. So we've constructed this very mass delusion, I would say, or that in our heads, that XYZ is the step that you need to take in order to be considered a successful person. So these kinds of mores and these social norms have to be challenged. And you can't just say that there's one road. There are many roads, and there are many paths. And once you start opening yourself to a larger horizon, to a larger reality, you can realize exactly how much you can accomplish. And not just in terms of a very tangible measure, but just for yourself. And you'll start becoming a much more actualized person when you look inward and say, hey, is this what I really want to do, or is it because somebody else is thrusting it down my throat? And of course, parental pressure is there. There's school pressure, there's academic pressure, and in those places is where, like Purvesh mentioned at the beginning of the session, having counselors and understanding reality and understanding social injustices and systemic oppression that happens, all these coming to terms with that, to keep yourself at the center of the universe and say, hey, all this is happening, all this is my reality, how do I want to work with it, and then where do I seek help? So we need to build an atmosphere of acceptance, and then everything else will follow.
So, okay, in that case, one of the last points you mentioned in that was to make this environment, we need experts, we need psychiatrists, counselors. But I'm sure we all are aware that psychiatry and counseling is probably one of the more expensive parts of medicine right now.
Yeah, very good point.
Why is this, and is there any way we can combat this? Like, I've spoken to hundreds of people on this through the years. Like, I'm sure you know Radha Krishnan, and I were talking about this even day for yesterday. Is there any way we can make this cheaper? I really have no idea.
Okay, so this is actually a very, very interesting question, because I would So when we say that, in order to do all this, we need psychiatrists, psychologists, and clinical social workers, and nurses, and occupational therapists, and this is a whole group of people who can do this. And I may actually get into trouble for saying this, but I think that that is only the third step. The first step is looking inward, like I said, and the second step is reaching out. The general public, we are a country of 1.3 billion people who can look out for each other. So I think that should be the second step. And then the third step is, going to reaching out to a professional, maybe a counselor or a social worker. The fourth step is a psychiatrist. And if Dr. Kishore were here, I think he would have just no, but he understands. And then the fifth step is hospitalized. There are so many steps to go. Before you reach that stage of, expensive medicine. But one second, no? Prasad? Yeah. So they don't know I'm doing a live session, sorry. So my house is just functioning like it normally does. So, so I think, so these are the steps that we need to follow. First, we need to figure out, as a society, how to start accepting each other. And then, then only everything else will follow. But in terms of psychiatry or in terms of mental health, yes, it's become very expensive and it's unaffordable for a large population, which is why actually mental health care needs to be like general health care, afforded to the entire population. And you should have insurance. Insurance policy should cover mental health. And the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 has actually made mental health care a right for all citizens in the country. So at any point, if you wish to access and you can't afford it, the government is obliged, or the government is legally mandated to give you that treatment in government health facilities. So in that, but by the time you access them, that itself is a complicated issue, but maybe I'll come to that when we talk about Nalam and when we talk about the programs. But it's a great point. But I just wanted to say that, when you talk about mental health care, mental health access, it starts with you, then it starts with your immediate circle, then it starts with general society, then you get to the specialists.
So, on that, I was actually first person I asked I can remember is I asked a psychiatrist, why are you guys so expensive, right? Like, first person to ask. I asked, why are you guys so expensive? And he just said, we're expensive. We're actually not that expensive because think about a doctor probably examines you for 15 minutes and then you're out. We take 1 hour or 2 hours with each patient. And before we get to the patient, we spend about 30 to 40 minutes thinking about what we should ask, what we should talk about. So think about 2 to 3 hours per patient we spend per day or per week. And all that time, we actually, if we started charging as much as doctors, we actually would be making much more. We are actually not that expensive. It's just that we are charging per hour and for inconsistency where we might not get as many patients this week or next week. And actually, yeah, I can understand, right? Actually, mathematically, it makes sense. They're actually not charging too much. It's just that the way psychiatry works, has to be this way. So is there any way around this?
Yeah, so first of all, I think when now we start talking about technical stuff about, mental health care and mental health services, we should again stop thinking only of the psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is one part of the puzzle, a significant part, but a part. So we have psychiatric social workers, we have clinical psychologists, we have counselors, we have occupational therapists, we have psychiatric nurses, and I think all of them are equally important. And like I said, the social acceptance is actually the biggest is actually the biggest piece of the puzzle in terms of one's personal recovery and actualization. So when you're going to talk about that, I think first of all these professions also need to be taken into consideration. So we don't need to jump right into the right to the psychiatrist first. These professionals are equally important, and yes, in terms of how the person is how a psychiatrist needs to be prepared. Other professionals also need to be prepared just as much. But I think the onus shouldn't be on the general public alone. It should also be taken up by the government, because it is a difficult service. It can be extremely scary, and it can be painful for many people. In fact, therapists' mental health itself is a very, very largely discussed topic, because they have to day in and day out deal with people with so many difficulties. So yeah, but they need to live, they need to earn their money. So there is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with charging what they're charging. But the onus shouldn't be the patient alone. The onus should also be the government, the onus should be the employers, the onus should be the families, and the onus should definitely be on insurance companies.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, this cost must be cut into segments so that people, like, even for a person who is in a middle class family, psychiatry is expensive. And okay, Purvesh and I talking about this right before the call. Is there a thing where people, we read the study where people who are, when a graph is going down in terms of wealth, the graph also goes up in terms of mental illness, where people who are poorer suffer from more mental illnesses. Is this, what can be the reasons for this, or is this a true study, like validated?
Okay. So again, a great question. So when you start looking at mental health in terms of not just the individual, but mental health as a collective society's responsibility, then you will start seeing that you don't, because you're right now again we're placing the onus on the individual to pay. It's almost like, hey, you know what, you have a mental health issue, it is your fault, and so you need to pay the price for it. But so insurance companies don't take it up, or governments don't take it up, right? So it has become inaccessible to a very large section of the population. So that so I'm linking your previous question to this, because when you become poorer, there are more things where you're excluded from. There are more things that you don't have access to. There are more things that are preoccupying your mind, like where am I going to get my next meal from? So obviously everything has a bearing on your mental ill health. So definitely there is an inextricable link between mental health and mental illness and poverty, which means there is an inextricable link between mental health and social justice. So there is, so if you are somebody with a mental health issue, there are several things, there is your, like, I mean, I'm going to go on keep saying this, but individuals, society and community and politics, and there is a field called liberation psychology, which actually talks about how they only focus on advocacy and activism in order to achieve mental health gains. Because if you look at war-torn, victims of, war-torn countries, or victims of disaster, or victims of rape, it is not their fault. It is a systemic or a gendered oppression that has happened to them, and they have been the instrument upon which somebody else has done injustice. So that means the penance for that is also that the same system needs to respond to them to get them better. The attribution of their illness is the system, so the system needs to respond accordingly. So yes, poor people definitely have a larger propensity for mental health issues, have lesser access to care, which means more high risk of homelessness, and then a high risk of intergenerational trauma. So let's say your mother is unwell, and she's a single mother, a widow, who's living from just the like 1 square meal a day, which she has to earn for her child, and she develops a mental health issue, becomes homeless, and the child is alone. So the distress is passed on to the next generation, and so on and so forth it goes. So I think, yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that definitely answers my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Better words than I could have put together.
Yeah.
So you're trying to say that it's not, there's no a quick solution. It's a more holistic approach where it might take us a few years, but it is a fight that we have to keep fighting.
Yeah, there is no quick solution to anything.
Yeah, Have you watched this movie called Devar Mahan?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So it's a
Yeah.
beautiful line. This might take so long that I might die. And then Shivaji would be like, okay, then just die. I
Yeah.
can't stop you from dying.
Yeah.
If I sow a seed, it's not so that I will stand in the shade, it is so that you will
Yeah.
stand in the shade. So
Absolutely.
if we start fighting today, at least tomorrow's generation can reap the benefits of it. If we don't fight today, nobody's going to reap any benefits of anything.
Absolutely, 100%. Because, I mean, look at this. Like I said, mental health is as old as mankind itself, and I think we've been mankind for the last maybe 50, 60,000 years. So, mental illness has come for 50, 60,000 years with us. So, if they think 200 years of psychiatry is going to solve this issue, well, wishful thinking. It's going to take a while, but I think now, but I think this is like the golden age of mental health awareness. I think a lot of young people are coming forward and survivors are talking about their issues. So I think we're in a good place to now. We have to take it forward now, beyond the rhetoric, beyond the narrative. Hey, what am I going to do? Nothing. You don't need to do anything massive or anything special. You just, somebody has a mental health issue, just be there for them. You have a mental health issue, don't beat yourself up for it. I think we start there and then we go forward.
Like, I think, okay, this is going to sound very weird again, but like, I think this pandemic is a very good driving force for this education of mental health, where people who have not had time to think about if they are okay, like,
Yeah.
have had unbelievable amount of time to think about if they're okay.
Yeah.
And another very sad thought is we have been exposed with or without consent, where we have to sit and look at people who are going through things. Before this, we were too busy to. Okay, person I would take us is Sushant Singh, right?
Yeah.
If he had passed away years prior, it would have just been another passing thing. Like, yeah, he passed away, and not enough people, not enough eyes would have been on this. But because he passed away this year, so many people have been talking about it. All these things are spoken about today, and like Chadwick Boseman, he had cancer and he was fighting through it, and
Yeah.
all these things are spoken about today because we have time. We have surplus of time. Would you say that this is a big driving factor for so many people's eyes being thrust upon mental health?
I mean, to be very honest with you, I just know how disastrous the pandemic has been on so many people. And I think the first 1.5 months, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Banyan, but personally, I was like, hey, I'm a very introverted person, so I prefer to sit at home. I'm like, hey, everybody's sitting at home. I don't have to step out, and it's great and all that. And then I started stepping out and saw just how much people are suffering. So yes, I'm very, very happy, and we are very happy that there's a lot of focus, there's a lot of conversation on mental health. But the pandemic has just been just disastrous for a lot of people, especially people who don't have anything. So I think while we are thinking about our mental health, I think if we can also think about social justice and see how we can, with our masks on, go out and step out and give offer somebody help, or speak to our grandparents via Zoom or whatever link or meet. So and just prevent that kind of social isolation. I think that would be the real takeaway and a real learning. And just, or maybe go serve biscuits to dogs or give food to homeless people, because all the potikadas also, many of them have shut down. Many people have lost their jobs, so homeless people don't even have, they can't even rely on the kindness of strangers or rely on
Yeah.
the kindness of these tea kada owners who are just brilliant, and you call tea kada bench also. So so this is where you should bring about that kind of social justice, and it has led us to think about mental health. Now we need to think about social justice.
Yeah.
So that would be my
100%.
response. Yeah.
100%. We um, people are okay. I don't know where to go on from this, but people are talking about social work and people suffering more. And I think
Yeah.
people are, because of this pandemic, things are being, there's more people shining light upon things that are closer to their hearts. For example, that's why we started this podcast. We wanted to talk about things that are close to our heart, like
Yeah.
opinions and things. That's why we are here with the mental
Yeah.
health and everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think, okay, I'm not going to say it's a net positive, negative. It's completely unnecessary. Talking in that sense is is the pandemic good because we're talking about mental health, or is it bad because when people died? No, it honestly does not matter. Like,
No, I mean, I don't think I meant to, put the mood down, but I'm saying that I'm super glad that we're talking about mental health. But I want us to stop talking now and then, get into action.
action, yeah,
So,
100%.
I think that is what all of us want. That hey, we need to start being there for each other now, because I've had 6-7 months to think about mental health. I've had 6-7 months to actualize. Now, what am I going to do with all the newfound wisdom that I have? Is it just going to last till the lockdown, or is it going to sustain for a period of time? So, yeah.
And to those who are listening to this part, now that you've come to the self-realization of what you are feeling, what you're thinking, the best thing to do is figure out what other people are thinking. So just go to Wikipedia and just search up the random mental health terms that you know, and just try finding out what they exactly mean, the history, the connotations about it. I think that's a very good start, right? Like learning more about
Yeah,
things that don't exactly affect you.
absolutely. Absolutely. Or you're too scared to find out.
Or you're too scared to find out.
Just go ahead and there's so much information out there, and like I said, this is really the golden age of mental health in that sense, because everybody is putting out so many accessible messages about mental health. And I think that was our initial conversation as well. We don't want to make it some exotic thing. It is a complex
Yeah.
issue, but we break it down bit by bit. And podcasts like yours are so important to normalize it, but to also break it down for the larger community, because you don't have to be some massive expert, but I think it's good to have this general knowledge. It should, and I feel it should also happen in schools. This conversation should be part of your school subjects. We learn about everything under the sun in schools, and I can't for the life of me remember a lot of it, but I do know that if I had a proper mental health education, that would have made a serious impact.
I could not agree more. We I'm not a very big fan of the education system. I would tell you that I do have a bias
Yeah,
there, but we do learn a
you and me
lot more
both.
things.
But again, like I say, when you said different generation, now I'm feeling it because I was in school 20 years back. So I really don't know what the kids are doing and what the system is like. But
Oh,
I'm hearing that there are some changes. But
oh
yeah.
no. Trust me, nothing has changed. 20
Okay.
years ago,
Okay.
what you learned
That's.
is still what we're learning now.
Oh no.
Maybe
Okay.
we excluded a few things, but nothing has been added. Uh,
Okay.
Mental health is definitely not one of those things that added.
Yeah.
And a lot of very important life skills, like social skills, have to be added. For example, as you
Yeah.
said, right? Um, thinking about yourself. I don't think that's a
Yeah.
very easy thing for people to do. It's
Yeah.
something that you need. I honestly believe it's something that you need your holding your hand to do.
Yeah.
You, at least for the first few times that you're thinking about yourself, I really do think it's better to do it with a bit of help. You don't know what
Mm-hmm.
exactly you're looking for.
Definitely.
Um, yeah, books will help. Philosophy helps. People have been trying to answer this for thousands of years since Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think people need to learn how to think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
wouldn't you say, like, in schools we should implement that?
No, so we shouldn't ever tell people how to think, but I think we should give them the tools to say that, hey, you know what, this is all the information that's out there, and present it to them in an accessible way. So I think much of our problems, and I interacted with a colleague many months back, and he has done his PhD on just how to disseminate information and make it accessible to people.
Wow.
You
Okay.
know, so I am such a fan. I wish I could, you know, speak to you about the technicalities of it. Unfortunately, I'm not the qualified person, but I do know the importance of making information accessible, and I do know the importance of breaking things down to brass tacks. I can sit here and go on about some clinical terms that will make absolutely no sense to you. Frankly, some of them don't make sense to me also, and I've been in the sector for 10 years. So there's really, you know, you're not the right audience for it. If you want to do your PhD in neuroscience or something, or you want to do your, you know, PhD in clinical care, sure, you know, go ahead and learn these terminologies. But what do they mean in the real world? So that is what we need to talk about. So that's why, I mean, I can't tell you how important these podcasts are, because they're doing it in other countries. User survivors are speaking about their mental health issues, and but what we're doing here is we have these highly technical sessions that will put the entire universe to sleep. So we need to make it entertaining, we need to make it accessible, and we just need to break it down to what they really mean instead of going on with jargon, which is what scares a lot of people away from learning mental health.
Hmm.
So, yeah. And it
Like,
starts in school, like you said.
I think Dr. Kishore Kumar has added he's added in the comments. Problem solving skills and other life skills has been added.
Yeah.
He'll note that parents, teachers, and significant adults have to commit to build capacity to think and act positively. Um, I don't know if they've been added. I graduated from school, I think some 3-4 years ago, so I'm not exactly
Ooh.
sure what changed. But like,
Okay.
but when I was in school, there was this concept that we should integrate philosophy into
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was just like we would go tell the management we should integrate, and they'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll integrate next year. And the next year we'll go back and say we have to integrate, and we're like, yeah, next year easily we'll integrate, and then nothing. Because honestly, it's not something that has been graded on. I can't give
Yeah.
a school an incentive to add something like this,
Yeah.
and I don't know if a non-incentive thing is easy to be implemented.
Well, yeah, but I think, I think Dr. Kishore's, you know, comment on life skills, he's done this, and I think I'm truly missing him, in, you know, speaking in this conversation, because he's like a king of life skills. He knows how to work with children, how to work with young people to really break down concepts of stress and emotions and emotional regulation and management. So he's done it in Karnataka, and he's done a module on it as well. So there are some schools which are really coming forward and taking it, but taking it very seriously. But I think starting from, Purvesh, is one of his comments is really nice. If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you haven't mastered it,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So
fact.
yeah, so I think the minute, and there are some really good Tamil songs also about it, that learning to question what is reality, learning to question the status quo, and how I don't know, I don't remember the name of the song, but I'll send it to you at some point.
Oh my
But you
God, thank you
know,
so much.
just yeah, so just saying, your first thing should be questioning the status quo. Hey, why is the sky blue? Why is the sun orange? You know, you start with this and, you know, inculcate that kind of curiosity. Then you inculcate it about, you start with Dr. Seuss and then go into Socrates or Buddha or whoever it is you want. But you start telling people that don't just sit and listen to me when I'm telling you something. Ask me questions back. Challenge me. And and then you bring in philosophy, then you bring in mental health, and I think it starts coming out naturally. So we really need to figure out together as a society how to just stop being scared of, you know, asking questions, and stop being scared of accessing knowledge. But I
Hmm.
also, from the other end, from a systemic point of view, how to make knowledge accessible, how
Yeah.
to transact on mental health.
Uh, I all this I agree with, except for one thing. I do not
Hmm?
believe philosophy should be started with Socrates or Aristotle.
I said
Because
Dr. Seuss, I didn't say Socrates.
yeah, even then, no, I think it should be started with Rene Descartes. I think that's the best way you can
To a
go.
5-year-old?
No, to anyone. If they
Okay.
can't question, I think Rene Descartes is basically just question. So question,
Mm-hmm.
then you can question the answers that you have.
Okay, if you say so. I think Socrates also talked about Socratic questioning. I think it started from there. But yeah, anything, just
Yeah.
yeah. So you and I are talking to each other like this, and there's just like, hey, you know what? I'm very interested in what you have to say,
Hmm.
right? And I'm very
Yeah.
interested in your perspective. And I think when you start questioning, when you start challenging from a point of view of empathy, from a point of view of equality, and not saying that, hey, you are this and I'm that, or I'm this and you're that. I think then some of these complicated conversations can start happening.
Purish said, or even Krishnamurti. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Oh,
I've been
super.
lis-
Okay.
I've been listening to him a lot recently, and yeah, I actually completely agree. Rene
Yeah.
Descartes, Krishnamurti, yeah, philosophy should start there. Socrates
Yeah.
and Aristotle will get a bit too complicated after a point.
Yeah.
But I really hope schools will incorporate this. I don't know if it will be in the near future, but do you think an organization like Banyan or another organization, a small organization, should start like looking into this, where they can approach schools and offer their help? Does Banyan
That's
do this
already happening.
in Banyan?
In Banyan, we work with about 500, 600 children
Hmm.
from with several of them who have parents with mental health issues, both in Chennai and in Chengalpet, erstwhile Kanchipuram, but now Chengalpet district. And we started introducing life skills training programs and started talking about, the basics of mental health. So we do that. There's another excellent NGO called Nalanda Way itself in Chennai that does that, and they now I think work in Delhi as well. So it's happening in pockets, but it needs to come together.
Oh yeah, Purish has said a very good point. I hope they integrate it, but don't test it. Yes, please don't. That'll be so ironic. That is,
Yeah, that'd be quite
imagine.
brilliant in that sense. Yeah.
Imagine you have an exam on philosophy and then you gave the wrong answer. That's the epitome of Indian education system.
I'm not going to jinx anything, so I'm just like, it's just keeping quiet. I'm hoping that, we only go upwards from here and don't get back into these archaic methods of teaching and didactic learning, because it really, really doesn't work. I mean, I think you need like maybe a mind like Sheldon Cooper's to retain all the information that you learn in school, because it's just so, thrusting it down your throat rather than making you learn through practical applications, or making you do many of the things that your ancestors used to do, get into farming, do carpentry, or do something like that. There are multiple facets to education which I think we need to explore, and I think we're going in that direction, so I'm hoping to be a little positive about it.
Like 100%. I think that is the thing about. Okay, obviously another bias. I'm an art student. I'm not a student technically, but in arts, we are like probably the most appreciative of different people, right? So
Yeah.
if we can integrate more people into this, we'll have the voice. Maybe if we can teach uh, a person with mental illness how to express what they feel, I think art can do a much better job than science could ever understood. Actually, I mean, ever understand. Like we should get more people to do arts. Like, don't you feel like you connect more with an artist than the scientific paper?
I don't want to separate the two, because there's beauty in science, and there's a lot of science in art. So
Ah,
it's just, I think we're separating them again, because of, we just feel like we need to compartmentalize everything, but I feel art and science are interconnected, and
okay,
art
yeah.
definitely has to be accessible. Art definitely needs to be. Arts therapy is actually gaining a lot of prominence in India, and a lot of NGOs are also NGOs and for-profit organizations are actually doing it, and we offer arts-based therapy in the Banyan as well.
Yeah, and see, I think as we spoke earlier, right, the
Yeah,
misrepresentation of people with mental illness in cinema,
yeah.
I can't really fault the directors
Hmm.
or the bias here, because they are just working on their ignorance. They are like I saw this interview of Bala, the man who
Hmm.
made Tamagan. He said he just wanted to show what he saw, and
Hmm.
honestly, I can't really fault him. That is probably what he saw. And if you want to see the truth, then you need somebody who is going through mental illness to show what mental illness looks like. And I think one of the best movies which has ever been made on mental illness is It's Such a Beautiful Place. It's this animated movie
Okay.
with stick figures.
Okay.
The director suffers from severe schizophrenia and he had depression, and
Mm-hmm.
he made this movie to explain what his day-to-day life is.
Yeah.
And I think this movie has done a much better job than any third perspective movie has ever done on schizophrenia, like The Beautiful Mind or anything. So I
Yeah.
think that is what we need. We need people to talk about their experiences rather than person like me talking about probably what they're experiencing.
Or a person like me. I think, I mean, of course, I have also, suffered from mental health issues. It's not like eh, I haven't, but I'm just saying, yes, testimonials are important, but you see. I don't think you should say we shouldn't fault the director because he can't do only what he sees. He needs to do his homework on what other people see as well. You can't see one person and say, hey, now I'm an expert on mental health, I'm going to make a massive movie about it. So and I'm not blaming this particular director, but I think even in Hollywood, and we hold Hollywood to be the high standard, it's just so dramatized and it's just so sensationalized that you're just terrified of even exploring this topic beyond a point. And I think, yes, user survivors being at the center of the narrative, and I hope the next interview you do or the next podcast you do is with somebody who can speak a little bit about their mental health issue, or speak a little more in detail, and we can go into the questions a little more deeper about their experiences. Nothing can be compared to what a user survivor has to say. That I totally agree with you.
100%.
That's the most authentic experience.
And honestly, right, representation, as much as people argue about it, representation is honestly very, 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 very important.
That's
I can't say this enough. I want to be a filmmaker, but my aspirations as a filmmaker was very limited. What is the max you can do? You can probably win Filmfare Award. Until A.R. Rahman went and did the unthinkable. He went and won an Oscar. And then everybody's like, wait, why can't I do that? If he can do that, why can't I do that? And you need that kind of a one break where once somebody has done that, somebody close to you, someone around you has done something, you're like, okay, if they can, why can't I?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
There is, Stephen Fry, right?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So Stephen Fry speaks very openly about his bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was, I think, the president of Denmark, or a former president, who spoke about how she went into severe depression after her son died. So, and there is actually a book, I can send you the title of the book later, on world leaders who've suffered from mental health issues, starting from Winston Churchill to Mahatma Gandhi to one of the Jack Kennedy, all of them. So many of them have suffered from mental health issues. I don't normally use the word suffer because it's also a learning, and many people say that it's a part of me and I've learned from that. I'm just using it very colloquially now. So yes, when you see testimonials of people who've come out the other side, or who are living with it, and then you'll say, hey, you know what? Hey, I can do this too. This is my reality too. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's president. It could be your best friend, or it could be somebody in your class who you thought was invincible, but is going through their own insecurities, or is going through their own mental health issues. And they come forward and say, hey, you know what? This is happening to me also. That can be a bigger breakthrough. Or it can be somebody who works for you in your house, or it can be somebody who's gone through extreme poverty and mental distress, and then after that they are now working as a housekeeper, and that is their personal victory. And but it's victory just as important as a Jack Kennedy's, because again, it starts with you, how you look at yourself. And when you feel that, hey, I have gone through this distress and I'm tiding this wave, and share that success with you, I think it's just as inspirational.
100%. On the topic, one of the big inspirations for me to start this podcast or get on the air is
Yeah.
this YouTube channel. Okay, people are going to be very surprised, very weirded out by this, but this YouTube channel called Flip Flip, who they do movie reviews. They
Okay.
do very what do you say this? A-rated movie reviews, where it's
Okay.
they swear a lot in Tamil, and like the movie reviews are very fun. But
Okay.
after a long break, they made a video about just answering frequently asked questions, and in that somebody asked why you guys are making videos, and they both were just like, yeah, we're just completely depressed. Like our life is just terrible, and like we're just completely depressed, and we can't get that creative energy flowing enough to make any videos. And
Yeah.
few weeks from that, so there's two hosts on Flip Flip. So it's
Yeah.
Sarv and Gurubai. And Gurubai made a video about how he dealt with wanting to die from suicide, how he had harsh suicidal tendencies, and how he recovered from that, how music and arts helped him get through that.
Yeah.
It was honestly an unbelievable thing to watch, because it's not something that we talk about, and these people are just randomly making videos about it and sharing it to an audience which doesn't even have an understanding towards what they're talking about. And
That's brilliant.
I can't understand the courage or the bravery or breaking of social norms to get to that point, right? And I think that is where like we need to draw inspiration from there.
Yeah. Just normalizing this.
Yeah, like I broke my hand, I broke my leg. Yeah, I suffer from depression. It should be like, it should be on that context. It's something I've already happened, something I've gone through, I'm going through it.
Or
And
something
like,
I'll go through for the rest of my life, and I just have to learn
yeah,
to live
something
with
I'll
that.
go
Yeah.
through. Yeah,
Yeah.
something I'll go through.
Yeah.
So, how would you think we should do this? Like, honestly, it's a very hard question. I don't know.
Well, I've always sort of fixated on the answer that people with mental health issues should come forward and speak about their experiences, and many of us in the Banyan also do that. So we never say after a point the lines start blurring in a sense, and we say that, hey, I have gone through this too, and I've suffered from depression, and I've had suicidal tendencies. I've cut myself as a teenager, and and literally show the physical scars of your pain to somebody who is very lost, or who may be very, very severely unwell. So I think a good start would definitely be to put yourself out there, and it's a very brave thing to do. Very few people used to do it. Now more and more people have started doing it. I think now celebrities are also coming forward and talking about it, but it shouldn't again, and forgive me for sounding naughty, for lack of a better word, but not just talk about depression, but to talk about other illnesses in the spectrum as well. There's anxiety, there is bipolar disorder, there's schizophrenia, there's body dysmorphic disorder. There's quite a few distresses that somebody can go through, and especially with teenagers with eating disorders, because there's a perfect idea of a body, as oh, this is how you should look, this is how you should see. You're like, oh, your hair should be like this, your chin should be like this, your nail bed should be like this. So these kinds of pressures make somebody feel so disoriented from reality. So not just talk about depression alone, but to talk about other illnesses also. And there is this guy, again, I can share this video with you, who actually he's somebody who's got bipolar disorder, and he spoke about how he actually documented from morning to night his mania and his depression. He did the whole thing on video, and I was bowled over, because his mood just changed in a day, in a matter of a few hours. So these are things that not just for mental health professionals like me, but to the general public, to say that, hey, you know what, have you gone through the same thing, or somebody else is going through something like this? So to not just restrict yourself to depression, but to talk about a few more complex disorders, a few other complex disorders as well. And it shouldn't be that, like I said, it shouldn't be a Stephen Fry and say that is the narrative of success. There are success stories from rich, poor, homeless, that it's just the sense of personal victory that you have. That needs to be acknowledged, and more people need to come forward and speak about these things.
I've had a lot of friends who've suffered from various mental illnesses. Like, I have a friend who suffered from bipolar disorder, and just talking to him, and like, he was very open kind of guy, and like talking to him about how this feels and how it is different from being happy or angry or sad, and it just puts a different perspective. Just like talking is honestly going to be a lot better than watching a movie or reading about something. It just feels more proper. It feels more full. Like, they can give you a better understanding. And one of my very close friends, one of my best friends, he suffers from schizophrenia, and it is not like in the movies. I would tell you guys that if there's do you know any YouTubers who have schizophrenia who talk about it, or do you know anywhere
Quite a
that
few.
people?
Quite a few.
Quite a few. Okay, we will try giving you guys links to all this, but like,
Yeah.
the interaction and how it is very different. It is not something that as an aspiring filmmaker I would feel comfortable, or uh, I would say it's easy to show on film. It is so much more complex and complicated than that. Like, as I would say, like, psychiatry is a very, very paradoxical science. It is the most complex thing, trying to understand the most complex thing. So if you understand the most complex thing, it's like, it's not that complex, but then only that thing can understand this complexity. It's like the human brain is so complex, but how do you understand? What are the tools that you can use to understand such a complex thing? That is probably another question Puresh wanted to ask. Is there any limitations to psychiatry? Would you say this is one
Tons.
limitation? Huh? Funds?
Tons. No, I
Tons?
said
Oh,
tons.
oh,
So
tons.
like I said, it's a 200-year-old science,
Yeah.
and it's I mean, and we in the middle there were psychiatry was also very sadly trying to ape other so-called hard sciences, which cannot be, you don't know the mind, you don't know the functioning of the brain, and then you pretend to. And what has happened is that it suddenly claimed to have all the answers, but you couldn't see that happen in the real world. You say that, hey, you know what, this is what you break it down. You break schizophrenia down into three key symptoms of positive symptoms, negative symptoms, and disorganized symptoms, and say, oh, we figured this out and we have all the answers. And then the patient doesn't get better, the individual doesn't get better, and then you blame the individual for it. No, you haven't understood this. I haven't understood this as a patient. You haven't understood this as a psychiatrist. So or a psychologist, or a social worker. So let's not claim to have all the answers. Let us just leave some gray spaces as gray spaces. So I think that anybody who says, anybody who tries to have a hegemony over a particular subject, um, it's not going to work. It's a collaborative thing. It's like you said, it's complex, and there are so many factors that are associated with what happens to a human being and why it happens. So if one person does not have the answer, the individual actually has the most answers. It's
Uh,
not the psychiatrist, right? So it's complicated, and multiple people should come forward and speak about it. And again, there is never going to be one narrative. There are going to be multiple narratives. There are not going to be happy stories all the time. There are going to be some questions that you're still befuddled with, but let's live with that, befuddlement, with keeping a foundation of empathy and keeping a foundation of acceptance. I keep coming back to that.
so the foundation of acceptance. Do you think this is going to be a thing which the elites will bring, or is it something that we can bring to the rural parts of India and like the poorer communities?
So I don't know who the elites are, but
Elites are probably like the top 10%, 20% of India.
in terms of wealth or in terms of knowledge?
Wealth and exposure. People who
Okay.
are like probably watching this, I guess so. Yeah.
So, like I told you, in the beginning, we've seen some unbelievably accepting and wise and brilliant people in rural communities, in pockets that you cannot imagine, and the exposure that we're talking about in terms of even electricity or running water or a railway station, but they will accept somebody with a mental health issue, and they take it as a part of a spectrum. So they are not restricting themselves to one narrative. They understand that the vibgyor of human behavior. There's so many colors, there's so many shades, right? So, but it comes very naturally to them. So I think it should be the other way around. When saying that, oh, should the elites do this? I think the stories of the people who've accepted in these kuti places and in these and in these smaller pockets with few lesser exposure to all these podcasts or lesser exposure to even a cell phone. I think those are the stories we need to hear about, and the elites so-called should learn.
We 100% will try our best to find these people to get on the podcast. I think that's going to be a light that many of us have not really shined upon mental illness. When we think about mental illness, right now it is at least fixed upon people around us, people who have all this knowledge, people who have all this outreach into the world, right?
Yeah.
And we really need to get the other perspective of people who don't have this voice, people who don't really have, as I would say, what we call knowledge, like what we call the exposure.
We've sort of deconstructed knowledge and exposure in the beginning of the conversation itself.
Yeah.
So we've restricted ourselves so much to what certain narratives need to be, how education needs to be, and you have to transcend all that to truly learn and know and to understand. So and I think you will bring in these complex narratives, and you will bring in these people that we are talking about, and it's unimaginable how all the things we read in textbooks, it just happens.
Yeah, that I will give you. The things that you read in textbooks, I don't know much about psychiatry. It's not one of the subjects I studied much, but from the people I've spoken to in the field, they don't have a lot of their psychiatry is probably the best science. So people will tell you we know nothing about it. It's the humblest science in my regard. Like they will tell you outwardly we know nothing about it. Probably that's because of time. As keep saying 200 years is not a good time for science.
Yeah.
So it is a long, hard process.
Yeah, and again, we shouldn't keep saying psychiatry, because psychiatry is just one part of the puzzle. Like I said, it's mental health. So in mental health, there are multiple other players, and a very important player is a family, are the caregivers, because they know much more. Right, and the individual of course is the most important, but then there are the caregivers, there is the there are the TKB owners who know more about the homeless mentally individual than a psychiatrist will. So it shouldn't be psychiatry. I think it should be mental health. And so if we then make it broader and we bring it talk about it from a perspective of equity and social justice, and we talk about it from a perspective of mindfulness and kindness and understanding and truth, and and gray spaces, I think that would that would take away the hegemony of psychiatry in that sense.
It would ease the burden. And
it will stop telling only part of the truth.
Yeah. In the end, that's what science is about.
Yeah. And the truth is, never pure and rarely simple. Life is messy and it's complicated and it's weird, downright weird sometimes. So no one person or no one system or no one community or no one science has the answer.
So, what are some? One more thing you want to know is, how much is technology aiding this fight?
I'm
Or
sorry?
how would you see technology taking part in this fight? Is it on the side of the good, or is it on the side of the regressive?
Uh, I think it has its positives and its negatives. So with Facebook and with Insta, I've seen a lot of really good stories where people have been, they're coming forward and talking about their experiences. So it's making people feel less alone in their journey in one sense, but then there is also a lot of pressure to be on social media. There's also a lot of pressure to, get so many number of likes, and there's also pressure to present yourself in a particular way. I think if that pressure goes off and there's no rule to being on social media, hey, today I'm on Insta but tomorrow it's okay if I'm not,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and it's okay if I have a bad selfie and, like, my hair is messy right now and I'm not wearing any lipstick, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
yeah, you don't need to take the perfect picture. You don't need to have the perfect post, and you don't need to have 1,000 people liking your posts. So then if we use technology where you don't let technology overrule you, because it's an inseparable part of our lives now. We're not this is not we're not suddenly going to say, hey, I'm going to live in among stones and leaves. It's not going to happen that way. Technology is a reality, and it's going to be around us, and it has several advantages, but as long as you don't put too much pressure on yourself or on the poor technology. So yeah.
And on that, there is this. Okay, again, I watch a lot of movies, so I'm coming back to movies. That's my forte. That's my expertise. But there
Sure.
is this movie which has got a lot of hate by people who have not really watched the movie. This movie is called Cuties. It's a
Okay.
French movie made by Netflix, and that
Okay.
is a movie that really shows uh, the young generation. It's a generation who are younger than me, who are like
Hmm.
about 10 years younger than me, how they are dealing with the new world of social media. See, when I
Hmm.
was introduced to social media, I was already 14, 15 years old. But
Hmm.
there are people being born into the era of social media. So
Hmm.
how does that influence them? How do they interact with social media? And all these things that you said, I don't think a lot of us realize children are also facing these problems. People
Very
rarely
much.
understand that. Very rarely understand that how you look and how you present yourself. When we think about terms like this, body dysmorphia, we're thinking about teenagers.
Yeah.
No, no, no. Right now, 11-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds are facing this.
Yeah.
And this movie beautifully showcases this. But I'm going to give you like a trigger warning, caution. It is a very hard movie to watch. There's a lot
Okay.
of very provocative scenes with children. I would
Okay.
really not say it is an easy movie to watch. My friends and I
Okay.
watched it with a lot of difficulty, but it is definitely a movie that will give you the education that you need on social media and mental health.
Okay. Okay. Then
And
I think I should watch it. Yeah. We all
yeah,
should.
100%. There's subtitles with two
Okay.
inches that will connect you to the world of cinema.
Okay.
So, so with that, uh, there's another thing we wanted to ask you. What about emergency care and recovery centers that Banyan is working on and has been implementing? Uh, do you think this is how the world should deal with mental health rather than calling the police or things like that? There is this whole conversation about if a mentally ill person is there or they're in society and people are scared, as we said. People call the cops. So do you think this is
Hmm.
going to take over, like take away that part of calls?
Okay. Well, the Banyan's Emergency Care and Recovery Center actually works very closely with the police. So again, and there are many programs in the United States that engages police in mental health, because see, we work very closely with homeless people, and police interact very closely with homeless people with mental health issues as well, and very often from a point of view of kindness, and they've been real saviors in many sense. There's been, of course, there is the other side, but you cannot take the police out of the equation if you want to work with homeless people. So the emergency care and recovery model, in fact, we have very close ties with the police, and we have done a lot of trainings on mental health for the Chennai police as well. So the you just need to sensitize the police with the right kind of information, and get them to work with you to reduce the individual's distress from the streets to when they go into the facility. So the emergency care and recovery center is not to undermine the police or to take the police out of the equation. In fact, it brings them very, very much into the equation. We're very close to working with the police.
And this is a topic which is emerging internationally, right? The police should be more a holistic thing. They should branch out into different sections, different sectors, where you call one helpline and then you tell your problem, and then you get a expert to come to see. So let's say I call a person and I say my friend is suffering from an anxiety attack, and we need immediate care. I don't think EMT, ambulance is going to be appropriate for the situation. I would prefer having a counselor or an expert on that subject to come. Do you think that is going to happen, or do you think, okay, let's say a person who is on the verge of dying from suicide? Do you think there's going to be another helpline I could call? Do you think that is a better alternative than calling the police or fire service?
Yeah, of course. If you are, having thoughts about, dying by suicide, then you should definitely first inform somebody who you can trust, and along with whom you need to call a mental health helpline or a mental health professional. So and also, it's not just calling the police. I think while police officers need to be sensitized, corporates also need to be sensitized. Every mental health needs to be everywhere. It's not the domain of police alone. You need to when somebody in an office where there's just so much busyness, there's so much happening all the time, that when you see that you need to be able to notice, or you need to be able to reach out to a colleague who you feel is on the verge of a nervous breakdown or a mental health issue, or the individual needs to be able to come forward and say that, hey, you know what, I'm going through this. That's why now several offices are also getting equipped with mental health care providers, and then they refer to specialists if the issue cannot be resolved by the provider itself.
Because I thought about this because I used to work in the fire service in Singapore, and there we were taught how to deal with a person who is going to kill themselves, who's going to jump or has taken poison or something like that. Honestly, I can tell you with 100% surety, we are incredibly ill-equipped to handle such situations. And it's not like this is where we're supposed to be and this is where we are. No. We are not, like, if I keep my hand that low, you wouldn't even see it on screen. That is how ill-equipped we are to handling such situations. And I really think, I don't know if defund the police is the right term for it, but we need to uplift more organizations and more things to help people, right?
Yeah. I mean, it has to be an integral part of every system. And it has to be done which is in a way which is least stigmatizing and least promoting a particular way of thinking, or least promoting that, hey, this is what is the right thing, this is what the wrong thing, and stop getting into these moral polarities. So we need to introduce systems that accept complex narratives or diverse narratives.
Yeah. And how long do you think this would take to implement? Which time would see the benefits of this?
I think, like I said, we're already seeing the benefits of this, and but in small pockets. But I think maybe another. I don't know. I'm not great at predicting, but I do know that we are in the right
Optimistic.
direction. Yeah, optimistically, I would say that maybe another 5 to 10 years.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're on the right track in mental health, and I think we're doing the right things. There are so many organizations, so many youngsters who've come forward to work with mental health. So many offices, so many schools, and so many of these groups that are talking about mental health. That I think we should have a positive outlook about it, and I think we should say, and there are and people are getting into really walking the walk and talking the talk. So it shouldn't be very long. It's just that there's again this is right, that is wrong. You're right, I'm wrong, and this witch hunt or this morality that we keep promoting, that should go away. Say, and yeah, we should be comfortable with things we don't understand
Yes.
and not claim like I think that is the biggest disadvantage of social media in that sense, because we whether you're left, right, center, right, what your political orientation is, hey, you know what, I've said this, it must be true. And I saw this really really cool picture of two pictures of earth, where this is the earth before your opinion, this is the earth after your opinion. It's exactly the same. So you put it out there and then you start bullying somebody because they have a different opinion than you, or they're coming from a different point of view than you are. And for all of course it annoys you, it annoys me also. And when I was, I think, younger, I used to start responding to these things. But and I see that many people are getting provoked and there are many trolls online. So those things where you say, hey, you know what, I figured out the answer, that surety about the right and the wrong, and the good and the bad, I think that needs to go. But apart from that, I feel we're in a really good place.
So we have a lot of things planned with the Banyan
Okay.
in the future. Hopefully we can implement that very quickly. Talking
Absolutely.
about things in a lot more focused approaches.
Yes.
Do you have anything that you would like to, as we're coming at the end of our time, what would
Yes.
you like to leave us on? Like, what would be that closing conclusion?
Well, I think I've been like screaming hoarse about this, but again, I would just like to reiterate that we need to focus on how much multiple narratives are important to to make a picture whole, and there is no one right answer. But I think when going forward with the Banyan, and we have also spoken about this offline, definitely talk about the social justice impact on people's mental health, how poverty and how deprivation impacts mental health, and how homeless people with mental health issues are right now on the streets and really just without any kind of support whatsoever. So probably the next session should focus on homelessness, and focus on individuals, and focus on beggary as well, because again there's a huge stigma saying, oh, you know what, he's got proper or she's got proper hands and legs and they should go and work. You don't know what brought them to that situation. Nobody wants to feel humiliated, but they've come to a decision that this is what is the best thing for me to do right now. So who are you to judge? You give the money, don't give the money. Don't say, hey, he can go and work. Do you know? Maybe he got laid off. You don't know, right? So the stigma around homelessness and the stigma around beggary, the complex relationship between homelessness and mental illness, perhaps we can focus on that next, while we're discussing while we start on this topic of diversity and minority mental health, and a wide canvas, and it's really a beautiful canvas because there's so many colors and it's not just one color. So, and this is a group of people we don't speak to very often, and perhaps we should have a homeless person with mental health issues speak in the next episode, and we can perhaps get a translator or something like that. So, or the individual may speak English.
We can translate.
So we can do something like that.
100%. I think we really need to shed light upon this, and we're really happy that we could be of, at least we hope to be of some help in this fight, in this cause.
I think you will. I'm very confident that you will.
And thank you so much for this opportunity. It really means a lot to us. We've been thinking about this, and Banyan has been very, very appreciative of and like very considerate of our efforts, and have helped us so much to be here where we are.
No,
Talking about
it was our pleasure, and I think next session we'll have somebody else and maybe get Dr. Kishore back because he's got a lot to say, and maybe a lot of our clients are just much more fun than we are and much more wise than we are. So we should get them to speak, and we're with you through this whole thing. So we will get the message out there, and we'll get multiple messages out there. And thank you very much for having me, and very importantly, teaching me how to use the Insta Live and the tech of the whole thing. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
For the viewers, please stay on. We're going to have Purvesh back in a bit, as usual, for closing comments, closing thoughts, and we'll be talking a bit more about what our plans are with mental health in the Banyan. So Purvesh, let's start with how has this been?
Well, that's been a very nice discussion. First of all, I think it was very informative, and it's a great starting point. Like we mentioned, we want to do a lot of things with regards to mental health, and I think this is a great starter episode. Like it's very palatable, very consumable, and I think as we delve into more complex and sensitive issues, people will definitely start absorbing it with more tact. And I think this episode is definitely a good setting for that. But a couple of things that really stood out in that discussion to me, I think one was the fact that how much time the lockdown has given us to think about ourselves, right? And like Mrinalini said, this is the golden age for mental health awareness. And I definitely agree with her. Like there will be a point in history, like when we look at Henry Ford's model for capitalism, right? That was the Industrial Revolution, and how he sort of took the direction for production. And we talk about that today. We will definitely talk about this one point in the future when things are better and when mental health services will be accessible to everybody and will be definitely of a higher quality. They'll be like, oh, in 2020 there was the lockdown and everybody was in their house, and a lot of people went through this and they finally understood this is something everybody goes through. There will be walks, videos about it, and it'll definitely be there, I'm sure. And yeah, I'm really glad I'm living through this, and I'm really glad, like you said, என்ன சொல்றது, பழம்னா நான் சாப்பிடாம இருக்கலாம், பட் வெதை நான் விதைச்சது. I'm really glad I can be part of that greater movement. Yeah. What about you, Adi? What were your favorite parts of that conversation?
My favorite parts, definitely the whole concept of talking about more facets towards mental health than what we just have, right? Rather than just depression and anxiety, harsher things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. These are things that there needs to be a spotlight on, and like how platforms such as this and like Banyan are helping in this narrative. Like I think that is very important, and like I don't know, just talking about this is an introduction as a whole.
Yeah. Yes, I think it was a great conversation, and this conversation is possible by our sponsor, Whisk and Butter Confections. And I've been saying throughout this episode that they sent us a box of cupcakes. Only the box is left, and I don't even eat that much cupcakes. Like the cupcakes were so good, and you can definitely DM them to order. They ship all around Chennai. It's Whisk and Butter Confections, and if you use the offer code TKBXWB, you'll get a discount on your cupcakes. They specialize in brownies, cupcakes, and cake jars. They also have vegetarian and vegan options, so they're very inclusive. So yeah, but apart from that, thank you so much for listening and watching for this excellent season 2 premiere. We're excited. Some great stuff's coming the way. And as usual, Nandri.
Vanakkam.